We've got details of these and many more coming up in the next 20 minutes. If you spend your time with me, remember, we're live on DSTV channel 279. Let's begin with the flooding because the situation as a result of the spillage of the Akonsombo and Pond dams has led to an upsurge in malaria cases among children under 5 in displaced communities along the Volta Lake. Meanwhile, pregnant women in island communities are unable to access antenatal care at the Akinton Health Center at the Upper Manya district of the Eastern region. In the aftermath of the Akonsombo Dam spillage, vibrant towns have been thrust into survival mode. From submerged homes to the desperate cries of the community and other affected areas in the Volta region, the last has been marked by heartbreak and challenges just to make it through the day. Godwin Sidiba visited the community and reports.
Bepe is a town that once thrived. Now it finds itself submerged. Lying on the bare floor for hours, 12-year-old Joshua Sodohu is a vivid representation of the dire circumstances in the town. He has been battling a stomach ache, enduring 2 days of relentless vomiting.
No money, so my mother to take me to hospital.
In an emotional statement, Joshua shares his home has been swallowed by floodwaters from the Akonsombo Dam spillage, leaving him and his mother financially destitute.
I have no money to take my child to the hospital. The water has carried all my belongings away. I need help.
The once bustling town is now a silent witness of the profound impact of the environmental crisis and its vulnerable residents. Their plight is just one among many. As dawn breaks, the story unfolds. Gagbeto Avi, a 69-year-old farmer, stands as a symbol of countless others stripped of everything by the unforgiving floods. In the silent aftermath, his only solace is the fragile bond with his children, the last flicker of hope in the wake of the devastation. Yet, the haunting truth reverberates.
Bibia ya wonye nim se nsuo no baba abefa nti eba asa no yentimi amfa ye niama amma se ahokyira ba midan enan nyina abubu.
My house has collapsed and I don't know where to go from here when the water recedes. It's a big worry.
Babies and children are not spared in the devastation.
I am sure that you watching at home can clearly tell how dangerous this is, not just for the residents, not just for Elizabeth, but also for the kids on the canoe.
I am afraid.
Why are you afraid?
But the water is here. Then I'm afraid.
When we put them in the boat and then they were not able to control themselves and then they fall in the water, they can die.
Driven by necessity and dredged in fear, these young learners have no alternative but to undertake the perilous journey in pursuit of education. The classrooms are now makeshift homes for flood victims, with each room accommodating 20 people. A temporary tent for the victims adds to their discomfort due to its plastic nature, which makes the heat unbearable. Moreover, there are no beds and underscoring the challenge in living conditions they endure.
It's too much to bear. The condition is terrible. You can look at the ground. This is where people sleep. Nothing to sleep on. You just lay your clothes and then you lie down. 5 kilos of rice, 2 bags, was given to 10 heads to be shared. So according to them, I will only take a cup of rice.
I've been literally here for just a minute and I can tell you that the heat here is definitely unbearable. These are the only spaces created for ventilation, but I will say that it is not enough because I am actually not really comfortable here.
Hello.
The story of Mepe's history, a sad chapter unfolds as the Akosombo Dam spillage affects communities. The strong homes are now underwater with just the rooftops peeking out. The usual sounds of daily life are replaced by the quiet flow of the floodwaters. Schools where kids used to learn and play are now beneath the murky water. Classrooms and playgrounds that were once filled with laughter are now silent. Really devastating.
The Volta River Authority, which has a statutory responsibility to ensure that the lower Volta basin is managed according to law, has woefully failed. And this belated attempts to shift blame on the Meteorological Services Authority and others like, residents failing to respond to move to higher grounds would not wash at all. The question is, where are they going to move to?
This is not just a story, it's a collective tragedy, and Mepe is just one example. A town once full of life is now filled with the sorrowful tales of its resilient people. Godwin Asideba, TV3, Volta Region.
Well, let's still stay on the spillage because MP for North Tong, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, one of the legislators whose jurisdiction has been badly affected, is calling for the relocation of people devastated by the spillage of the Akosombo Dam in the Volta region. Speaking to TV3, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa also asked President Akufo-Addo to declare a state of emergency to ensure that all the needed resources, both local and international, are marshaled to support the flood victims. Take a listen.
Our chiefs were appealing to the president when the president came here that if he could open Saglemi for our people to be relocated, because they can't stay in classrooms, for long. I mean, classrooms are not designed for residential accommodation. But in the meantime, seeing that it doesn't appear that the president is comfortable with offering Saglemi for our people, we are trying to mobilize on our own. So I want to announce that we have secured land, large tracts of land, so particularly construction firms who want to come in to help us, even if it's prefab will appreciate it. Compatriots elsewhere are learning. So our children are being left behind. They are losing precious academic time. And they are all going to write the same exams, the same BEC, the same WASI. How would they cope? So we need to relocate our people so that academic work can begin, the schools can be reopened. Then thirdly, the public health aspect of things. We really have to pay attention. I am glad that the Director General of the Ghana Health Service came here to see things for himself. He saw how precarious the situation is. I hope that he will quickly mobilize a public health emergency plan and support system so that already the typhoid cases we are seeing, the cases of cholera and all of that does not, blow out of proportion. Then we will have to have that difficult discussion about full compensation. VRA must know that they won't be allowed to get away with this. It is not fair to make people lose their livelihoods, lose their properties, lose their farms, and then you think that they should just cope with it. And I mean, it's not going to happen. Okay. We will insist on full compensation. And if we don't hear them announcing a plan for full compensation, we will bring legal action.
Okudzeto Ablakwa is the MP for North Tong, and his constituency has also been badly affected. Let's know what you make of stories that have been aired so far, especially the dam spillage. I just go into our social media platform, particularly Facebook, because we are live, engage us this morning. Away from the spillage, a fraud and security consultant, Richard Kumador, has emphasized the need for the national security to step up its cooperation with the media, civil society organizations, and academics in the ongoing battle against misinformation. His remarks was against the backdrop of concerns by the National Security Minister, Kandapa, that certain influential individuals are making provocative statements that could potentially incite unrest, even suggesting a coup.
There has been a gap between what the media does and what Ministry of National Security does. They will need to bridge that gap. I don't think they are liaising and having many friends in the media in general. What they also need to do is to ensure that there's a continuous education where we have an NCCE who does periodic education when they think their back is against the wall. They sit on a large sums of resources, and they need to ensure that continuous education is what they do all the time. Then thirdly, the ability to pick out the red flags on time and the early warning signs and put in a preventive measure to deal with it is what makes them the superstars, because all nations are faced with all manner of threats. And one of them is to have saboteurs within and external aggressors who could collaborate with people to destabilize your state. So it shouldn't be that you throw your hands in the air and say you are facing an internal challenge. You must be able to rise above the wall. And I think continuous education, engaging the media meaningfully, and make sure governance as a core tool is implemented broadly, and they wouldn't have any problem.
If President Akufo-Addo doesn't redeem himself in the next 14 months, he'll go down in history as one of the most disappointing leaders. These are the words of governance expert Professor Stephen Adai, and speaking exclusively to TV3, he emphasized the need for a selfless and trustworthy leader to accelerate the country's progress. The former rector of GIMPA, Professor Stephen Adai, alleged the high levels of corruption by appointees of the current administration.
This road contract will be given to you, provided you put 1 million upfront, or not that when you get your money. Then, and this is what Akufo-Addo must be thinking about, and if he knows about it, must be ashamed of. That now his people demand from you a certain amount before you be considered for the job. Why? Because then when they get it, whether the government pays you or not, they have gotten their money. As if people are in a hurry to loot the country before the end of Akufo-Addo's term.
He acknowledged the possibility of a rebound, but also warned that the journey would be challenging.
One of the greatest disappointments of Nana Akufo-Addo's regime is that honestly, he raised the hope of Ghanaians. Ghanaians expected that we had gotten the leader with a vision, with the charisma, with the determination. And it seems if he doesn't redeem himself in the next 14 months, he will go down in history of one of the most disappointing leaders. And what the corruption, the arrogance, they think that there is Ghana is for them, and that, you know, without them Ghana would not be there. Even think some of them thinking that they should tell us who should be our next president. God forbid.
He questioned government reluctance to address the issue of brain drain, which he believes has led to a crisis in the health and financial sectors.
The nurses and the teachers, who constituted about 75% of public service, will go for loans. And because they were public servants, it was assured. Now they are run away and they can't pay. So have to chase them to London, to America, and that. So the small banks, I know one which has about 7 million Ghana cedis, they are chasing, they have to write off.
He anticipates that citizens will hold leaders accountable to promote growth and development. Well, if you just tuned in, you're watching the first news bulletin of the day, New Day, in More News this morning. Banks have been encouraged to create comprehensive strategies for the complete elimination of fossil fuel financing. A report released by Action Aid has revealed that 7 years after the adoption of the Paris Agreement on climate change, banks' financial support to the fossil fuel industry in the global south has surged to an estimated $3.2 trillion.
Aim is to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change by keeping a global temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, a recent research report by Action Aid revealed that international banks continue to fund activities that are contributing to the climate crisis in the very regions suffering its most severe impact. Industrial agriculture companies in these regions have also received approximately $370 billion in funding since the adoption of the Paris Agreement on climate change 7 years ago.
We are calling for increased investment of financing for adaptation methodologies and government regulations while setting our alternatives to harmful climate practices.
Vice Chancellor of the University of Environment and Sustainable Development, Professor Eric Nyako Samson, drives home the urgency of the matter. Citing the 2022 report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC), he emphasizes the need for a substantial reduction in carbon emissions to prevent a looming environmental catastrophe.
And the madness of the world's banks and governments continuing to finance the destruction of the planet must come to an end.
Other stakeholders urge key institutions and development actors to collaborate closely with communities to bolster resilience to climate change and align with Ghana's climate adaptation efforts. The ActionAid campaign, Fund Our Future, aimed at promoting investment in climate change adaptation for resilient communities.
A group known as the New Ghana Social Justice Forum is demanding the immediate dismissal of the board chair of the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation BOST over alleged violations and infractions. The group picketed in front of the BOST head office in Accra. President of the forum accused the BOST board chair of violating his office's privileges by allegedly awarding contracts to companies registered in his name. He also claimed that BOST had accumulated judgment debt amounting to $3 million, demanding the immediate dissolution of the board and the removal of all top officials.
Silence is betrayal. Silence is a crime. We are calling for their prosecution. When you study law, Tatuchi Kata versus Republic, he was jailed for financial loss. And that is what has happened, has occurred at BOST. So they will face the music.
In response to the allegations, Deputy Managing Director of BOST asserted that the accusations are unfounded. He stated that the Auditor General has audited the company's account and found no such infractions. However, he assured that the issues raised by the forum will be investigated accordingly. The Deputy Managing Director of BOST received the petition presented by the New Ghana Social Justice Forum. And now to the foreign front. Hundreds of vehicles carrying aid are waiting to be allowed into Gaza to bring in vital supplies. U.S. President Biden has secured an agreement with Egypt to allow up to 20 lorries to enter the territory. And aid agencies are warning that far more will be needed. UN Humanitarian Chief Martin Griffiths says about 100 lorries a day will be required. Earlier, UK Prime Minister met Israeli PM Netanyahu in Jerusalem. Israel has continued to bomb Gaza and hundreds of thousands of people have fled their homes. The enclave also remains under siege with Israel blocking supplies of water, electricity, food and fuel across its border. Well, on that foreign note, we end this morning's news. For more news updates, just log on to our website, it's 3news.com. Thanks for watching. It's always a pleasure coming here. We're going for a quick commercial break. When we come back, my colleagues Roland, Bella, and Cookie will continue with the show. Have a good morning.